Welcome to Extropy on Air, the podcast from Extropy Advisors, where we dive into the world of AI, digital transformation, and the future of business. Each episode will bring you perspective from leaders, innovators, and experts across industries, all focused on helping organizations and, more importantly, people thrive in a changing world. Let's get started. Welcome back to Extropy on Air. I'm your host, Kevin Zirkle with Extropy Advisors, and in this segment, we're diving into a pain point nearly every operations leader, supply chain director, and customer service manager has felt at some point. That is order management chaos. Order entry, it really is the front door to your revenue cycle. It's still surprisingly manual for many companies. Email orders, PDF attachments, faxes, spreadsheets, they all sound like relics, but they are still a reality for way too many organizations. And they're costing businesses a ton of time, a ton of money, and a ton of relationships. So hopefully this episode is going to be great for you because I have joining with me in this segment is Nick Carpenter, the head of customer services for Esker, to really break down Esker's intelligent order management, how it flips the script. So Nick, I really appreciate you joining us. Thanks for being on the show today.
Kevin, great to be here, and we really appreciate the invite from Extropy Partners. As you stated, my name is Nick Carpenter, and I've been with Esker coming up on 10 years, and over that duration, really focused on Esker's order management applications. So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and I'm excited to speak with you on this topic. I would say the only thing is to make mention of is that when Esker says order management, this is part of a suite of applications that we help organizations transform their B2B customer service operations. So it's also part of an inquiries management platform as well as a claims management platform. And between those three, organizations are looking to use Esker to automate all of the tedious activities on their customer service team and free up their people to actually be a competitive advantage in the market. So it's something really compelling for organizations, and we've seen it have huge financial impacts for the folks that are doing this well. And just before we jump in, I always like to make mention that Esker's focus is specific to key industrial verticals or key verticals and industries like industrial manufacturing, medical devices, distribution, packaging, and electronics. So just wanted you and your audience to have kind of a flavor of where Esker's experience really comes to the table from.
Awesome. Appreciate that. That's a great overview, Nick, to get us started. So what I was hoping we could do is let's just kind of ground this in reality a little bit. Give us a little bit of specifics around what too many teams really are facing today when it comes to order processing in their own organizations.
Yeah, happy to. And we've seen it really narrow down to about 5 topics, right? So the first is efficiency, the impact of the team. Second is quality. The third is speed and cycle time. 4 is the human employee experience, as well as the turnover in the team. And the 5th is the customer facing experience. So let me just drill down real quick into each one of those. On the efficiency side, we see a lot of organizations have a customer service team that is still responsible for manually entering orders into their ERP system. Or for the orders that are in the ERP system, there's a lot of effort in actually getting those out the door into a fulfillment status. And the other thing that we see that really impacts efficiencies of teams is that they're operating in disparate systems. One of my customers called this the swivel chair, and they said for every order, we have to swivel chair between different systems in order to actually find the information we need to get that order entered. And so it can have a huge impact in terms of like what that team is actually focused on day to day. Are they swivel chairing or are they wowing customers, right? I think the quality side is one of the biggest financial impacts that we've seen organizations have because order entries errors are real and costly. And if you're shipping orders to the wrong customer at the wrong price, in the wrong quantity, those can directly lead to credits downstream. And we typically see those caused by complex master data, customers using their own information, complex pricing in terms of, quantity agreements and quoted pricing. And those are some of the things that we see really lead to the complexity and quality impacts around order entry. When we're thinking cycle time, it's all around the time it takes from receipt to entry, right? And some businesses pride themselves on being able to be the first to fill those sorts of orders. Others have SLAs that they're contractually guaranteed in order to actually process orders quickly. One of the major barriers we see on that front is that folks are bogged down in approvals and customer-facing communications that span the life cycle of the order and actually require collaboration with sales, production, the customer themselves in order to actually get that order out the door. In terms of turnover, I think of myself, right? Like as I entered the workforce, I didn't want to do manual data entry. I knew that there were automated tools out there. I didn't have the same tolerance for data entry that the generation previously had. And I think that we're seeing customer service reps want to be in front of customers and not behind a screen, which is typically the case in a B2B customer service environment. Last and finally, of course, is that customer experience, right? If you're not shipping on time, in full, no errors, there's a potential that that customer would actually shop elsewhere, right? I think Jim Tincher is a B2B CX author that I follow, and he said that trust is the number one indicator of an organization's potential growth with you in terms of revenue. And if you're not shipping on time in full without errors and they're left in the dark on order status, it's directly impacting the trust that they have with your organization to fill those orders. So hopefully all 5 of these really paint the picture of how this really impacts revenue for organizations.
I think that's great. I can't disagree with any of that. I actually love the swivel chair analogy. We've done a lot of work with clients, and really throughout their order process, they thought everything was fine, and until we really start digging into data, and you start to find things like backlogs and corrections and delayed shipments. I mean, these are all just silent killers for companies. So I appreciate that as a background. So if you could, Nick, maybe just kind of walk us through Esker's approach. What is intelligent order management actually supposed to look like?
Great question. And with those big buzzwords, I love grounding this in reality, right? So when we say intelligent order management, typically it comes down to a few areas around consolidating order channels and the intake of orders. It can be very simple. It can be very complex for global organizations, right? In terms of which order needs to be sent to which ERP system under which legal entity. That can be a very big challenge for some organizations. So I'd say it's around the order intake process. And that could be via email, EDI, a mobile app for field service teams, you name it. Once the orders are in the platform, it's validating that order information is accurate, right? Against your business rules and your master data and your sources of truth, whether that be CPQ or a quote or a contract. Once it's all validated, make the exception handling process seamless and frictionless for companies. It's not realistic on the order side to think that 100% of the orders are going to go through without touches. It's difficult to change customer behavior. It's going to be a reality, right? What happens when they put the wrong price in their order? You need to communicate with them and have a frictionless process to be able to manage that order and actually get confirmation through written response or revised PO that they're going to accept that price. Esker does that really, really well. So it's embodying that kind of exception management process. I would say the last and finally is successful order creation in the source of truth. And maybe your customer 360, whether that be Salesforce or another CRM platform like that. And then at the end of the day, maybe it's managing the return orders or order changes after the initial placement. So I think when we say order management, those are kind of some of the key aspects that fall into that topic.
Gotcha. No, so it just sounds like it's automation where it counts without really losing the ability to intervene when you need to.
And it's not overlooking any key area. Exactly.
Yeah, perfect. So I know this area might seem overwhelming for a lot of companies maybe looking at it for the first time. So what I was hoping we could do is just take a stroll through the competitive landscape a little bit. I know there are a lot of platforms out there that touch order to cash, but not many of them do order management really well. Where does Esker feel like they differentiate themselves in this market?
Agreed. And to highlight your point, Kevin, of it being almost a little bit of a unicorn, Gartner doesn't even have a magic quadrant for B2B order management. Just to go to show you, they have a magic quadrant for almost everything else, but not B2B order management. It's an area that can be easily overlooked for some folks. And I think how Esker positions against other options, there's 2 alternative strategies in terms of automated order management. One is EDI and e-commerce, right? And I think what we hear from organizations, and they tell us, is that first of all, every company we work with has some sort of initiatives in those areas, but it's difficult to change customer behavior and get 100% adoption through those channels. If there's too much friction, those customers might be going elsewhere. So I think that's one, is that Esker enables you to take orders how you're getting them today without any changes for the customer. The second big one that we come across is RPA platforms, robotic process automation platforms, which are fantastic. Every one of our customers that we work with has RPA for some function. However, when it comes to order management, it's a complex process and very difficult to scale to the hundreds or thousands of different customers that you have and all of the different business rules that need to be followed with an order, right? There's far better repeatable structured processes for RPA. Typically, when we talk to folks and they've tried this with RPA, they've got like 10 customers. It works okay, but it's not going to scale, right? And so that's what we find. You think of some of the other traditional players within business process automation space, SideTrade has a solid collections tool, but there's no upstream order management. High Radius, no focus on order capture. Bassware, it's got the invoice automation angle, but there's really nothing on the front end sales processes. So I think Esker is really that one tool that can span the entire office of the CFO from credit to cash, right? And not overlook that really important section in the middle, which is quote to order, essentially. So I would say that's a big one, from the Esker side, just kind of around where we position and where folks have found value with Esker.
Gotcha. No, that's huge, Nick. And I'm thinking with some of our customers, especially when your ERP is decades old or it's really highly customized,
Mm-hmm.
our clients really aren't looking to do huge rip and replaces. It gets very disruptive. They really want orchestration across sometimes very messy systems. So what I was hoping we could do, I wanted to go back to something I think you touched on earlier, but we'd certainly be remiss if I didn't ask you about artificial intelligence. I mean, AI is already changing the world that we live in. It's changing what companies look like today. And we all know it's going to drastically change what they look like in the future.
Absolutely.
So AI gets thrown around a lot. But what does it actually do in Esker's order management solution?
I love this topic. I don't think it's saturated by any means. A lot of IT leaders that I work with and technical leaders that I work with are on strict initiatives from the president, who's on an initiative from the board of directors to find opportunities to leverage AI to make that business more efficient and scale operations. So I don't think it's a saturated topic. I think what is organizations and people that say we do all AI, but there's no real specific tangible examples. So that's where I'm going to come to this conversation from, Kevin, and just give you a few specific examples. First of all, is Esker positions itself in the market as an LLM as a service company, meaning that we have LLM capabilities built in through Azure Cognitive Services that are pre-built, and we are doing the maintenance to stay up to date on all of those applications. So, for example, ChatGPT came out in, I think, November of 22. We had a pre-built customer service, B2B customer service use case embedded in the product by May 2025. And then since then, we've done multiple iterations of embedding the latest LLM models so that organizations that we partner with don't have to, right? They just know that they get the latest technology in the application. But how specifically we're using it, a few key examples. One would be natural language processing, the ability to understand free text, unstructured information. We find that huge in a B2B customer service landscape because they're getting emails that just say, what's the status of my order? Can you place an order, for the same materials I ordered last time? So having that system that's intelligent enough to read that and understand the context and act on it is huge. In terms of machine learning, that's a big area that Esker focuses on. We use that for things like remembering how a customer likes to order in terms of what actual material numbers or descriptions that they use to place an order and what that means in your system. And it can also be helpful for organizations that have bad, messy master data to remember which customer account selections to use. In terms of pure AI use cases, right? We've built it in for things like sentiment analysis, understanding customers that are at risk of potentially leaving. We use it for retrieval augmented generation, understanding that when a customer orders a generic description, being able to do that kind of intelligent fuzzy search and remember that right part number that they want to order. And then the biggest one that I'm hearing from supply chain leaders is anomaly detection. As the orders come in, how does this compare to their long-term average? Is it above or below what they've previously done with us? And that can be huge because it can be like a conversation to say, hey, why aren't you ordering as much as you expected? Or, oh my gosh, we're going to have a production challenge. We need to get some raw materials in the door to be able to fulfill this order, right? So I think that's a huge one. All of those are pre-built, embedded in the application, turn it on day one, it's going to do those things. So I think that's the other big distinguishing factor is an organization building these AI things from scratch, or is it ready there to turn on day one?
Yeah, no, great point. And I think it also helps for organizations trying to understand what their workforce is going to look like. I mean, this is almost like bringing a seasoned CSR assistant into the equation, but they never get sick, they never go on vacation, they never leave the user side. So I think that's all great.
Love that. And they take the tedious work off the plate so that the people can do the really impactful stuff, right? Because everyone's always like, am I going to lose my job? We're not seeing that. We're seeing the job change, right? Just to be a
Yeah.
higher value added function.
Yeah, and not only did the jobs change, but the impact that you can drive for your customers is really significant. And I know we kind of
Great point.
started this episode with kind of grounding things in reality, and I was hoping maybe you could kind of take us through a real world story of an Esker order management client in action. What are some of the tangible results that you've been able to drive for these companies?
Yeah, good Good point. I'm thinking of an example that I did last year with a packaging manufacturer. They were managing orders. About 80% of their orders were managed manually and entered manually. And those orders were a mix of some make to stock materials as well as some engineered to order materials. And I make mention of that because the workflows and the outcomes that they achieved were very different between those two work streams, right? But after implementing Esker, they were able to take the handling time on an order across both of those down by 80%. So it was taking on average 10 minutes. We'll get that down to under 2 minutes, right? They were able to cut their order cycle time by, I think, just under a third. And they measured cycle time for their engineered materials as the PO date to the first confirmed date. So being able to accelerate that life cycle of the order through that engineering workflow. They were able to reallocate just over 25% of their equivalent. So it was a few hours a day across their entire team to actually following up proactively on quotes that were issued previously that hadn't yet turned into orders. And ultimately, it led to an increase in customer satisfaction. They measured it through the increase in the net promoter score. But I think those are some of the big outcomes that we typically see, and they're representative across all of our customers.
That's awesome. That's actually very impressive, and it's really transformational to every level in that organization. I mean, you've got operational issues in there, you've got strategic
Yeah.
components, and certainly cultural components to what companies want to be moving forward. So, no, I think that's fantastic. One of the things that maybe I'd be interested in your perspective for our audience is, how do you see Extropy fitting into all this with you guys? I mean, why is implementation more than just turning on your platform?
This is another thing that doesn't get talked about enough. The key to a successful software implementation of Esker or anything is a three-legged stool, right? Between the technology, the people, both technical and business, and I would say the change management aspects of it. And I think an organization like Extropy is critical in the success of a project like this because you can help folks not automate a bad process, right? Too many times people come to us looking to automate something, and sometimes we have to tell them, like, honestly, it's going to be a ton of custom development. It's like, you're better off just like handling how you do, quoting first, and then you're going to be primed for automation. I think Extropy brings that experience and the ability to walk with a company through that journey. I think you can help folks align on clean master data, right? That's a critical success factor in any automation project. And then I think with the ongoing change management that you bring, right, to help an organization create a change management strategy, right, around how are we going to roll this out to end users? How are we going to communicate to them? How are we going to ensure that they're not afraid of losing their job? How are we going to upskill the team so they can actually do those higher value added functions? I think those are all areas that Extropy would bring an organization, help make them successful in an Esker project.
Awesome. No, I certainly appreciate that and agree 100%. It does take a village a lot of times, and we're really not just launching technology. I mean, we're launching a new way of working. I mean, it takes planning, it takes coaching, it takes course correction, all the things to truly drive the type of success that a client's looking for. So this has been great, Nick. I was thinking maybe we could close with this. Why should a CFO or a vice president of customer success, for that matter, care deeply about order automation?
Well, for the organizations we work with, order management is one of the main touch points that they have with their customer, right? So I think when we look at some of the financial impacts, it's around the timing of revenue. How quickly can we get those orders in the door and ultimately invoice and accelerate our DSO cycle? So there's a revenue timing impact. There's a cost to serve impact, right? As a lot of organizations measure this through their SG&A on the balance sheet, being able to optimize their SG&A and ensure that they're not adding headcount at the same clip that they're growing at. So having profitable growth is a big thing that we hear. I think the other thing is that when organizations invest in this technology for their people, people become empowered. I heard the equation one time from a leader: EX, employee experience, plus a focus on CX equals RX, ultimately a revenue impact, right? People are more empowered to wow customers. And I think when customers are wowed, they stay with you and they order more, right? There's a direct impact on the amount of revenue, the growth target that it can have for your organization. So it's not just some operational back office process, right? This is something that touches finance cycles and DSO cash cycles, as well as like direct revenue impacts as well. So I think it can be a major focus for a lot of organizations.
Yeah, that's awesome. And honestly, Nick, I think that's an absolute great message to wrap up on. So just wanted to thank you again for joining us. I mean, this episode really highlighted the power of intelligent order management. It's not just automation, but as a business growth engine. I think that's really important. So to our listeners, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to Extropy on Air, and tell a friend while you're at it. I want you to stay tuned for our next segment. We're going to explore how Esker is redefining accounts receivable automation. They're making collections smarter, more human, and more impactful for everyone involved in the process. So until then, always remember, our mission is to help you transform forward. We're going to be right back. Appreciate it again. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Extropy on Air. We hope you found today's conversation insightful and inspiring. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode, and connect with us at Extropy Advisors to continue the conversation on AI and digital transformation. Until next time, I'm Kevin Zirkle, and this has been Extropy on Air.